asphalt everywhere. I could have ended up just like that broken road, with a dead end in my path. Thank the Lord that I've got more than that. In this life there's nothing certain, except the curtain that rises to the stage. Silly games of second guessing, I won't forget the lessons that I don't deserve. Because one street over there's a life I could have known, would have kept me from the one I love today.
Hello, good morning, good morning. This is what
One street over there's a life.
One street over. What you doing? Hope you're doing well. Living life well, just one street over from where you live, and you just never know what's going on. So we're going to inform you on that. And one of my favorite ways to do that is when I visit with folks that are plugged into our county, like our director of schools, Dr. Danny Weeks is here, and you had your school board meeting last night, and so we always get to have you come in and give us the scoop.
Yeah,
So-
April and May are probably my two favorite board meetings.
Oh,
And
okay.
because in April and May, we start really recognizing students for what they've accomplished throughout
Oh,
the
that's
year.
cool.
And so in April, last night, we had, I don't even know how to count. I know we signed certificates probably for the last week, just
Yeah.
signing how many. But last night is middle school student recognition night. And so each of our 6 middle schools, they provided information. And this is for any student that won an award outside of their school. So a countywide
Okay.
award all the way up to a state award. And so
Okay.
we had everything from student athletes who won certificates and won things that they had done in various sports that we offer here. We had several in 4-H. We had a lot in band and music and fine arts that had done, just the middle school activities that are associated with those programs. We had a spelling bee winner. I mean, just anything you can really think of. Cheerleaders, lots of programs. And so I don't know how many students were there last night. I don't know how many parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and things were there. But we spent probably 15 to 20 minutes just calling students' names, talking about what they'd accomplished. And again, that is so much about what we are is recognizing and celebrating success and trying to help those students. And we've had that discussion before. The more a student is engaged and feels a part of an organization or feels a part of something in school, whether it's fine arts, whether it's an academic club, whether it's cheerleading, whether it's athletics or something like that, they fit in, and then that helps them socialize. It helps them get more adjusted. They learn to work together and play together and work for common goals. And then they learn to also to work with adults, the adult sponsors or the coaches, and how to respond to those things. And so last night was just the middle school night. In May, we're going to do the same thing for our high schoolers. And again, that's any student that's recognized for something that they've won outside of their school. So big nights for recognition.
Yeah.
And again, I think those are my two favorite board meetings that we have. I'm going to go ahead and throw in the other one is the early August one, when we get to meet a lot of our new teachers and our new administrators come to the board meeting and things like that. So those are exciting times, and being able to recognize, and we're so thankful for what the students are doing, because to win something, whether it's national, we had some national winners. We had some people who qualified participating. I think it was Beta Club that they've won the opportunity to go to a national event. And so those things, again, it's a combination of the students' work, the families' work in supporting them and helping them raise money and do the things that they need to do to be a part of those clubs. And then the school working with them and supporting and providing those opportunities, and teachers that have that passion for that club or organization or sport or whatever they're doing, and that desire to involve those students and teach them through that. So great night.
As a teacher, who submits those? Because I'm thinking of several right now that come to mind that I'm like, okay, in high school they need that they would be part of that list. Do
Absolutely.
the principals submit those, or do
Principals turn those into
Okay.
us. So again, as a teacher, you
right?
turn
So I
it
need to
into your
make sure
principal.
that my principal knows. Hey, don't
Absolutely.
forget we've
Yeah.
got this person that's done this. Oh, okay.
And then
Okay.
we bring those our office makes those certificates for those students,
Okay.
and then they come in and are recognized.
Very good.
Yeah, it is fun.
We're getting ready to do our academic awards
Mhm.
coming up on May 1st. And we just, we got the form for that yesterday.
Mhm.
And I love doing that. I just had this conversation with my son last night talking about even how much we need that just, hey, you did good,
Yeah.
because sometimes people assume,
Right.
but you feel like, okay, that was good. But if you don't hear it from somebody, you're like, well, maybe it wasn't what I thought it was.
Mhm.
And you need that affirmation so much,
Right.
and because it's one thing to look in the mirror and go, you are good. It's a good day. And do that self-affirmation thing. Remember that from Saturday Night Live? I remember that that just kind of popped in my head. But until you get it from somebody that doesn't have to give it,
Right.
it's not the same.
Yeah.
And so I think that's wonderful. I think
And-
that's
and I think,
wonderful.
I mean, and we value that, and our board values that, and seeing that our central office, we involve and encourage those things, and even dedicate dollars in our budgets for student travel and student participation in those events and things like that. So it is a wonderful time, and it's really you said it's a part of what we do, and it's a part of the development for those students. And so I know there was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches worth of certificates that we
I bet.
we had last
That's
night,
great.
and it was
Yeah.
wonderful, and just so many things. But as you said, to think you scored the highest on some test or some event, or you went to a competition and you scored that. That's nice when you come back and you get in the car with your family or your club. But to be recognized outside of that, whether it's wherever that recognition takes place, and our board really values those things.
I think so too, and I love these kids so much. And what you said about when they connect with these outside activities in the clubs and stuff, I have seen that as we're building our broadcast program, just the ownership that the students are taking for what we're producing, and how that's drawing some kids in that hadn't had their thing yet.
Right.
And they're finding their thing through our broadcast club or through the audio video classes. And it's just all these things that we're bringing to schools, it's just to help the kids find their thing, that they're passionate about.
And I was going to say too, what an opportunity for our community to connect to our students as well. Everybody can't teach, everybody can't substitute, everybody can't do that. But maybe I have that one niche that I need to bring to students, or I'd like to bring to students. I'm sure you've had guest speakers come in, whether they come in for a week or whether they come in just for a day or an hour or so, just to share some expertise that they have with that next group of kids that are going to come up and be doing that. And, it is fun. And it's whether it's done in a club environment, whether it's done as competition. I know I often get invited to go judge students that are participating in those clubs and activities. And sometimes it's nice to have, that screening or that judging before they actually go, so they can know what to improve upon, and so they can know where those skills are to work on. So,
Right.
I think of our FFA and
Oh, yeah.
people who have animals, and they'll come in and they'll share their animals. They'll talk about those animals and how to take care of them, how to work with them, and just so many things. And again, if someone has an ability or has a gift to do something like that, whether it's just we all have those things that we enjoy sharing about our own work or our own life, and so bringing those into the school to share those with those students.
Yeah, and we've had the kids that did so well in band. I don't know the specifics of it. I was just looking at that. I just looked at we had some that just won this great award in band in Greenbrier, and then of course we had our play that just, did you get to go? I'm gonna put you on the spot.
I didn't see your play. I saw one across town though.
Okay, well, I'm talking about the Music Man play
Right, y'all
that
did
we had.
Music Man. I
Oh
saw
my
one in another
goodness!
school.
I hate you missed it because it was incredible,
And
and
Music Man's one of my favorites.
and
yeah.
oh my gosh, it was incredible. But they just did such a phenomenal job, and I mean, definitely broke attendance records on that for them. So just seeing all that stuff and seeing what the kids are doing, they're so talented. I just love it. I just love helping them break out of that. That
Right.
maybe if they're a little, little shy or something, helping them break out of that. I love setting a kid down at the news desk, and all of a sudden they're reading news, and they're like, I can do this. And it's just so fun to watch that light come on. It's just cool. Thank y'all for letting me do this, Dr. Weeks. I'm having a blast. So what else did you do other than honoring the kids, which, yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
and I'm
Yeah.
going to talk about a lot of that, but
Yeah.
last night, other than the honors, there were probably only 4 or 5 business items.
Oh, I got you.
And so and those really went pretty quickly. We had a couple of bids that were approved. So anytime that we spend over certain dollars amounts of money, we go through the open bid process, and so people turn in sealed bids, and we open those bids and approve the bids that were there. So I know this sounds boring to a lot of people, but it's stuff we
It's
do.
details.
Parking lots
Oh, yeah.
and driveways to our schools. You think about the cost of doing those, and so that's very expensive as well. So we approved bids for a couple of our parking lots and a couple of our driveways to get seal coats over the summer and to do that, and mowing. It's
Mowing's a
mowing
huge deal.
season at home, and to take care of those yards and take care of those lawns. But we took care of some bids last night on the mowing and the taking care of landscaping and just trimming around the trees, trimming around the bushes and things like that. So those 3 things. Another financial thing is, as most everyone knows, we're doing a little construction over at West Side and over at IA. And in those 2 projects, we had to move some dollars from one category to another so we could take care of some expenses that came up in that. And so, a lot of these things were financial, and we've done those things. And then Joe Burns High School brought to us a small construction project that they're going to work on their campus. And so, again, one of those things that we expect everybody to know, if there are modifications being made to the school campus and the facilities, they bring those to our office for approval. So we make sure that they're built in the right place, that they're solid construction, they're not over the top of other utilities and things like that. So that Joe Burns High School had that project last night brought to us. So again, those are the business items. We always review several reports that come up, and one of those reports is our personnel report. So we look for, we talk to the board about people that we've hired, that we've transferred, that maybe have resigned or moving to different places, leaves of absences that teachers take or staff take, and things like that. So that's one of the regular reports we look at. Always look at the financial reports and see where we are compared to budget, see where we are compared to last year, and looking toward that. Unfortunately, we usually look at discipline reports. And so discipline reports that come to our office are those things that are serious level 4, level 5 discipline events that go beyond what the scope of a school deals with. And so we review those. Those are kept in confidence, and so the students' names are redacted from the reports that actually are public reports. But those are there, and the board sees how they, what the offenses are, and they also see what the punishment is that goes with those offenses. So they take a look at that, and then I guess it's not really a report, but it's the travel requests and the special permission requests that, again, we talked about clubs and organizations and athletics and things like that. So a lot of people are getting their trips in for the end of the year. They're also getting in trips over the summer because, we have a lot of ball teams go to camps, cheerleaders go to camps, bands go to camps over the summer. And so we take a look at those to make sure that the chaperones are appropriate, that it's a reasonable cost to attend the event and things like that. So those are some of the regular reports that I guess we kind of skip over those. I don't remember really talking in detail about those, but those 5 or 6 reports are monthly. So those are on the agenda every time, and so there's always special permission, discipline, financial, personnel reports, and those. So those are regulars that are on the agenda. But I guess we never talk about those.
Well, and people don't realize that just like my husband is part of the group of chaperones that's at Skills USA right now. And so the planning that goes into that, when you're taking a group of young people, that's a lot. I know when we were doing our training for, we have classes as a career and technical education teacher, you don't just go into the classroom, they're going to take you and teach you to teach. And so you're going to have a special program that you're going to go through. And mine happened to be led by a woman who had been an FFA advisor. And she spent one entire class just giving us all the details about travel because they do so much of it. And the things that could happen. And over the course of her career, the things that happened that you have to be ready for. And now they were able to handle them all. But it was excellent. It was excellent. And it just put it into great perspective. And it's, big prayers over all those that travel with the kiddos because they're kids, they're teenagers.
They are.
And yeah.
And, as you mentioned earlier, we were talking, I guess, before we actually went on live, but, she taught you the way she knew,
Right.
which may be completely different than another county. So
Exactly.
every teacher that's in that class has to bring that back and find out, okay, how do I do that in Robertson County, or how do I do that in whatever county I teach in? And there are different little rules and regulations about, what's important and what's reviewed, and how far in advance do we turn those trips in, things like that. So there's a lot to it.
So funny when some teachers, we've had teachers that have had to leave this county and go to another county, and one of the first things will be like, oh, they're a Google county, or they're whatever, because we're a power school, and so having to learn a different system. We were laughing, if you saw us laughing as we were getting everything turned on and getting ready to go on the air. What we were talking about are the things I'm about to finish my 3rd year as a teacher. And the things that I still don't know that people don't realize we don't know because we're not in education. But here you had you grew up with it. You had parents that were teachers. So it's what you've known your entire life.
I've known my entire life.
Yeah.
You're saying you finished 3rd. I'm not going to tell you how many years I have in, but it's more than 3. But it's actually getting closer to 40.
Yeah.
And,
wow. God bless you. That's wonderful.
As you mentioned, my dad was a school principal.
Yeah.
And so I grew up in school.
You grew up with the verbiage.
Knowing how to do that.
Yeah.
My mom was a teacher and a first grade teacher. So the benefits of that at home, I learned to read before I went to school, learned to do that, and things like that. My dad was a math teacher just like I am. And so, I really enjoyed math and puzzles and things like that. So, but, going to school was just a normal part of what I did even before kindergarten and before starting school. And so just going around and, hanging out in the summers. You talked about professional development that teachers do, and, going to school and just being around teachers. That's been my life.
And it's so funny. We were talking specifically about professional development. If you hear a teacher say something about PD, that's what they're doing, and it's ongoing. And this is part of our licensing, guys. You have to do so much professional development to keep your teaching license. I mean, they don't just throw you in the classroom, guys. People have such a misconception about what teachers do and the continuing education. And you have a process that, with mine being a unique curriculum, sometimes the things that they'll say, okay, here's some things you can select from, don't completely mesh with what I need. And so they have a program where I can say, okay, this person can train me. There's somebody, Jesse Costello, we were just talking about him. He's very, very good with equipment and cameras and all of those things. And I talked to him yesterday. I said, if I can put my proposal in to have some professional development time with you this summer, because you're there this summer.
Absolutely.
But y'all do take vacation, but you do have, you're there, you're not off for the months that the teachers are off out of school. And so you can work those things out. You submit it, you get approval, and so you can direct that professional development very specifically to your curriculum. And so there's all kinds of things, and I'm still learning all this and learning the process, and that's what we were laughing about. I said there's so many things that people who have been around education their entire careers or grew up in it like you did, they just assume those of us who've never had it, that we're like, what? What does that mean? And we're learning, my husband and I, because neither one of us have an education background, but we're having so much fun and loving it, and we're working really hard to learn all the nuances of it. But it's fun. It's fun. It's something new all the time.
And just
all
like
the time.
Just like any professional,
Yeah.
We need those current opportunities to sharpen our skills.
Yeah.
To either, whether it's content that maybe changes, or how to deal with people. Children have different issues as they come to school. Laws and regulations. I mean, the legislature is hopefully about to wrap up, and so there will be just tons of laws and things that have been passed. We have to take those. We have to process those, and what does that look like inside Robertson County? We have to adjust our policies to do that. Then we have to come back and train our staff to meet those. And as we look at our calendars, we had a discussion with somebody about a calendar the other day that had called in and had a question about, they weren't sure if we were in school Friday or in school Monday, due to
Right,
the holiday and
right,
things
for
like
the Good
that.
Friday holiday.
Um, but they said, well, I don't understand why we took these PD days, and they said they didn't know what PD meant, and I
Yeah,
guess as you say
yeah,
that, PD is on our school calendars that we
uh-huh,
publish, but they wanted to know, what are those days for, and what do they
uh-huh,
do, and so sometimes we I guess overlook the fact that we put it on the calendar and assume everybody knows
yeah,
students are not in school on a PD day,
yeah,
but knowing that that's where teachers get training, they have time to look at test scores, to look at data that they've collected through that 9 week period or 6 weeks period, whatever it happens to be, and that they can use that to sharpen their skills of what I need to do to adjust my teaching
mm-hmm,
to match that. Your class, I think, is a skills based class, where you learn
mm-hmm,
the skills and it grows. But if I'm in a math class or a reading class or something, and I miss some of those skills, I need that time, and I need to know what students are missing, so I can go back and fill in those blanks, and we can get those students remediated so they're not missing skills when they get through.
Well, and that's one of the big things I talk to my kiddos about attendance. It's
Hmm.
just it's so frustrating. Whenever I've taught you to do something, and then you have no clue what we're doing, and we've taught it 3 or 4 times,
Hmm.
and maybe you've missed.
Right.
And so I have to stop what I'm doing or bring you in during, homeroom, during cat time, we call it,
Hmm.
and go over that training again. And I'm having to take away from what else I had planned on doing. Maybe
Hmm.
we're producing the news during cat time. Maybe we got somebody coming and record the news
Hmm.
or something like that. Something that I really need. People don't realize when you're keeping your kids out and you're letting them lay out and miss a day, the domino effect of that.
Right.
Because when a teacher has to stop what they're doing, when they had something else that they were planning to do with a whole room of kids, and you're having to give individualized attention over, and I mean, you want to do that, it's neat, but if it's constant,
Right.
and there are some that it's constant
Sure.
with, and we take them to task on it. We have conversations with parents and things
Right.
like that, and try to. But I think a lot of the times parents don't realize the essential need for the kids to be there.
Right.
They've got to be. The kids are like, oh, I'm getting A's in there. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There's some really smart kids.
Hmm.
They can just, kind of not show up. And I talked to one young person the other day about their position as a mentor,
Hmm.
because they're an upperclassman. I said, you're mentoring these incoming kiddos.
Right.
And I said, you need to take that seriously.
Hmm.
And I don't think they'd ever thought about that. And so, I don't know, but I'm having a ball. I'm loving it. I'm a little tired. I'm ready for summer. I'm ready to catch especially because I've got a homeroom full of seniors,
Hmm.
and that's been special. And we keep up on the board how many days until,
Right.
so as of today, if they take their test days, they have 19 days, I think 19, or I think we're about 18, 19 days, because in the news, we put it in the news too, but we always record the news ahead. So I'm wanting to say it's 18 days on Wednesday, but that's how many days remaining for our seniors, and they're done with their high school careers,
Right.
and it's starting to hit them,
Hmm.
and you can just kind of see it, and they're kind of going, okay, what am I going to do? And they're ready, but it's just that it's that change and all that. So and I'm telling you, boy, as I write those numbers on the board, I get a little weepy because I've had these kids since they're sophomores, since I started.
So you're working
Yeah.
with seniors. So
Yeah.
will you rotate back and pick up a group of freshmen
Ideally,
and then work?
We're
with those?
discussing that because they really need teachers to be able to do that. But we're really, really wanting to go to a live stream newscast during cat time,
Mhm.
during the last 10 minutes. And that's the dilemma. If we're live streaming, I have to be in there monitoring constantly.
Mhm.
I can't turn away for a minute because something could happen.
Right.
And while that's not, that you don't have the restrictions if you're doing a live, because it'd be a social media live feed. It'd be
Mhm.
through YouTube or through Facebook like we're doing now,
Mhm.
something like that. It would not be the public airwaves. Public airwaves, you do not go live with people who don't understand the nuances of what the FCC has for expectations without what they call a dump button, a delay, a 5-second delay, to where if something happens, you can dump it. So it doesn't go out over public airways. So you don't have that threat, but
Mhm.
you still if a kid decides to be a knucklehead, you want to cut it right there.
Right.
And so, and so nonetheless, so that's the thing we're having the conversation about. And so if we can make it work to where, because that's just something that would be, I think it's our next step for our broadcast program, for our audio video program, is to be able to do a live stream every day. And the kids are excited about it. They're like, yeah, no more blooper reels. I'm like, well, no, we'll have some good ones because it'll all be live, and we'll keep it, we'll archive it, and we'll hang on to it. But we're having so much fun with that. So yeah, normally I think that's what happens, but we are kind of talking about, can we do that and still do a live stream? And it might be, maybe we don't start the live stream this year, and I have a cat time till she can kind of figure out. Because I honestly, I had to walk in yesterday when Dr. Osborne was talking with our counselors about scheduling, and I thought, yes. God bless y'all. Right. I cannot imagine trying to make sure, because the kids, I can't begin to tell you how many times during the day a kid comes to me, can I go to counseling? Can I go to counseling? They've got this class running. I would just go, if I was a counselor. And I didn't really understand what a counselor was until I got into the school system, because I thought counselor, this is the person who's going, oh, what's going on, honey? Yeah. Can you need to talk? That counselor, right? No, counselor is the person who goes, you need this many, and they're that too. I mean, they are absolutely that too. But they're going, okay, you need this many credits to graduate. What are you going to do beyond? Do you also know that you could possibly work and get, an associate's degree from Austin P? Just those kinds of things, So the counselor helps you with that. My little sweet friend, Mackenzie Wood, that graduated last year, she graduated with a associate's degree from Austin P before she got her diploma from Greenbrier. She's already in the nursing program at Tech and has been put in, I'm going to brag on you here, Mackenzie, the accelerated program, and she will graduate as a nurse, I think, next July.
How about that?
And I'm telling you, not even been out of school a year yet. Wow. That's what counselors do.
And you know what would be amazing? If she'd come back and work for us in the school system. What a great
Mackenzie.
idea. We
wouldn't that be fun?
Nurses all the time.
Yeah. I'll mention that to her because we've stayed in contact. She's like, here are my graduation. Here's my pending dates, Miss Vivio.
Right.
And so yeah, we stay in contact. So I'm going to put it on my calendar. I told her, I will do everything I can to be there. Yeah. And she's precious, but she's so excited. But she messaged me, I got in the accelerated program. I didn't have any doubt, but because she's just that good. But yeah, wouldn't that be cool? And what an example that is. But yeah, what an accomplishment. But that's the kind of things that counselors help you with. And I didn't understand any of that, but I did. I had to pop in on their meeting yesterday, and I thought, ooh, this is hard to do all that. So, and that's a long answer to, will I have a new cat time? Dr. Osborne's seeing what she can do, because she knows we do want to do a live stream, but that's going to require very close attention. So can we do both? I don't know. We're talking with Dr. Danny Weeks, guys. This is our director of schools. A couple of things I wanted to ask you about that you mentioned. Two questions. You mentioned the state legislature.
Yes.
They've passed a law about cell phones. Is my understanding, and I've had the kids tell me about this, and my husband say it is a law that the kids can't have their phones now. That's been passed. It's going to be in effect in the fall. Of course, that's already a rule from our school board. Do you anticipate there being anything different done to help enforce that law from the state?
Well, and that's one that you talked about professional development earlier. Superintendents also get professional development. So near the last week of May, I think it's around the 17th, 18th, somewhere in mid to late May, we actually go to, I'm a part of a group called the Tennessee Organization of School Superintendents. And so all the school superintendents are members of this association. And so we actually go and get professional development.
Okay.
So we'll hear from our attorneys, we'll hear from legal specialists, we'll hear from people who work with the legislature and our liaisons there. And they'll come to us, they'll break the law down, and, rather than hearing the clip that we hear on the news,
right,
they'll actually talk to us about what that law is, what it says, and how we need to implement it. And they'll bring suggested policies for us. And so, we'll bring those back and review those policies. And if it's something our board will need to pass or to put into our policy manual, we'll do that. We're talking about learning today. So then we principals are required to come back to school. I think this year on July 20th. And so as principals come back to school, that's where I will and my staff will show and teach principals what we need to do
Okay.
for next year.
Okay.
So, I'm probably at the same place you are at hearing,
Yeah.
somebody clip that this was passed, and then, we'll actually find out what the details are of that, and then we'll bring that back. My staff will process that over the summer. We'll meet with principals in very late July so that, they can change handbooks or change policies and procedures that they might need to at the school level.
Well, because see, and that's one thing is the kids started mentioning it. My husband mentioned it because I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the news anymore, and a lot of that's just because I'm doing a lot of stuff ministry wise, and I'm doing a lot of study of audio video stuff, and so I just don't have time to do all those things. But it was mentioned to me, so I went and looked up some of the verbiage on it, and it really sounds like what we're already doing in most regards. Now, I want it to. I'm phones are a big dilemma for me because sometimes we need them in class.
Right.
And so that, I wish I could just put them away and never see them because they are such an extraordinary distraction to kids. It's just extraordinary. But they are a very good tool in audio video. They're just an excellent tool.
I think they are in a lot of classes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was doing some quick math last night during the board meeting. We were talking about a couple of things, and just to have that calculator on our phone,
Yeah.
Something so simple rather than trying to dig up or find a calculator. It's on there, and we, teachers need those in classes. Students need those in classes.
Yeah.
I was one of my favorite teachers in college. Taught it was U.S. history, which I didn't really like U.S. history, but he brought in. Long time ago, brought in slide decks and showed us slide after slide after slide of what he was teaching about, and just having that video to go along with that. So I can imagine, as a teacher in the classroom today, if we're talking about something I don't know about, or talking about something that's far away, let's pull that up on our phones and let's take a look at what that looks like. Or let's, whether they do it on the computer, we do it on our phones and things. It's such a wonderful tool, but it can also be used so wrongly. We talked about discipline hearings earlier today, and there's students that get in trouble with phones.
Oh,
all the time,
yes.
just don't have that
Oh,
control or
yes.
self-discipline, and so when it's used as a classroom tool, I suspect that's what the legislature has done is
Yeah.
Telling us that we're not just going to have it sitting out on our desk during class and texting and things like that, but if it's used as an instructional tool, I'm sure nothing will change for that.
Well, see, and that's been just like we were going to, talking about the play, we were going to the theater to get a video, and we now have so many cameras. The phones are just not as needed, and so I told them, I said, you can go ahead and get your phone if you want to try to record something. So I had them to carry their phones. I said, but I do not want to see them on the walk from the classroom to the hall.
Right.
We had not gone 2 steps, and one of the boys were, and I took it and just took it out of his hand, put it in my pocket, and found out later. A parent had texted him during school hours too, and I said, maybe we need to re-educate our parents. Quit texting your kids during school, because I have a lot of really good students that I'll catch them on their phones, and my mom, and I said, do they not know that you're in the middle of class?
Right.
I chastise my children. Sometimes I'll forget to turn my ringer off on my phone, and it'll ring right in the middle, and I'll look down and it's one of my kids. I'm like, what are you doing? Calling me at 10 a.m. I'm in class. So those kinds of things. But, it's just, we just have to stay on it. But with that law having been passed, reading it sounds like what we're doing to me. And I think that's probably what you're going to find. But I am using it as a teacher to double down. It's state law. It's not just a school board regulation.
Right.
It is state law.
Right.
Get off your phone. Put your phone on the door. All those kinds of things. Okay, my other question would be, and I'll give you this question, and then I'm going to do my break and come back. Where are we on hiring? We just had our big hiring fair, and you were talking about, this is the time of the year we recognize retirements and things like that. So how are we positioned as a county as we're looking to next year, job-wise? What are we needing? I know special ed, always. Assistants, God bless them. Oh, my wonderful friends that work in that. Lauren Gray, of course, is our heads up our program at Springfield. Amazing, amazing, amazing what they do. So I know that's always a need.
Always.
But anything else that you can think of. But while you're thinking about that, let me talk about Barry and Rebecca Richards with Exit Prime Realty. And I haven't spent a ton of time talking about Kilgore Station Bluegrass Festival when I bring them up, so we're going to do that right now. Kilgore Station Bluegrass Festival is coming up May 16th and 17th, and you're going to want to be there because it is a blast. That is where I met them. It is so much fun. We'll have the Dan Kelly fiddle competition on Friday night, and then we'll have a big old square dance in the barn. And that little barn, it's a tobacco barn that they've put a stage on. They've put a dance floor in the back. It's down this little hollow, Kilgore Park. It's almost, the acoustics there, it's just brilliant. If you haven't been, you just don't know what you're missing. It is so much fun. And I think this is number 12 for us. I'm not really sure, but we'll be there that Friday and Saturday, Friday evening, and then all day Saturday for bluegrass and just a lot of fun, great vendors. And the vendors, one of them will be Barry and Rebecca Richards with Exit Prime Realty. They'll have their tent, and you can sit down and you can talk to them and ask them all the crazy questions you have about real estate. Maybe you want to be a realtor. They would love to mentor you to be a realtor. That's exactly what happened with them. Rebecca was in radiology, of all things. And then she went home to be a mom. And then when she was going back into the workforce, she had done a little bit of real estate. She goes, I think that's really what I want to do. And so she looked for a company that checked all the boxes. Exit checked all the boxes. All these years later, she's still with Exit. Her and Barry put together a new branch in the Exit tree with Exit Prime Realty. They were with the Garden Gate team for many, many years. Great company to work with if you want to be mentored to be a realtor. If you need help selling property, Barry is a marketer, came out of a marketing background. He was a vice president of a media marketing company for 17 years in Nashville. Bringing that expertise to the table is priceless. He's now the broker here in Springfield. Rebecca has an agency up in White House and an agency office there, and they combine those two to bring you Exit Prime Realty. Reach out to them at sellwithbecky.com, sellwithbecky.com, or buy BUYRobertsCounty.com, or give them a call. 615-504-7425, 615-504-7425. Always please let them know that you turned Cincha. We appreciate it so much. They are what they bring to the program. And if you want to be a sponsor of the program, we've got some new ones coming on. We've got the UPS store here in Springfield coming on as a sponsor. We'll be talking about them in more length later this week, but also we've been talking a lot about Bernard Farms Custom Cuts and Market, how much fun we're having with them because they've got their big Easter program coming up on Saturday. So we'll talk more about that during the week, but we do have some sponsorships open. If you're interested, you can call me at 615-594-7736, 615-594-7736. And back to it now. Dr. Danny Weeks, our director of schools, talking about where are we, because, I mean, this is a big question. I talk a lot about people. A lot of people are like, so what are you and Mark doing? I said, we retired into teaching. You want to do it? And then my friend Chris Valines did it.
Yes.
And then he went into English, and I'm like, oh, that's a tested subject, buddy. That's going to, and bless his heart, he's doing so great, and he did great. And but I told him when he told me he was going to do that, I'm like, but I'm teaching what I've been doing my whole career, you know. And my husband has, and he's even though he has never worked in law enforcement, he's always been in security in some capacity somewhere on the side, you know. And that's what his master's is in and everything. So he's having a ball, but but that's stuff we know,
right?
You know, and Chris is like loves to write, and you know, and got a great English background. But whoa, that's a big. But I was so proud of him. He's doing great.
Right.
So where are we as far as teachers and staff?
It is really that time, and I think you know there's some people who you know have just evaluated throughout the year, and they say, okay, I know this is the year I'm going to retire. And you know, I know our family's moving somewhere, so we need to turn in our resignations and things like that. So it's really a time of a lot of flux, and our
Right.
office and our HR department is very busy about doing those things. And so everything from you know we've had a couple of principals announce their retirements, and so
wow.
we're interviewing for principals. And again, that's you know that's a long process, but you know everything from principals all the way down you know to cafeteria workers, to school bus drivers. You know, we're hiring pretty much all the time, you know, just to be honest. And especially, you know, teacher assistants, special ed assistants, you know, there's always a need for those. Thankfully, we don't have that need for principals all the time, but, those are the people who are the leaders of their building. So we, we spend a lot of time putting the right people and trying to put the right people in place for those. But
So you're saying principals, as in principals, not assistant principals?
as in principals, yes.
Oh wow!
So,
Can you tell who those are, or is it still not to?
Miss Lori Smith over at Crestview
Okay.
has announced her retirement.
Okay.
I think this is her 30th year, maybe 31st. And so
Okay.
she's announced that.
So Crestview's looking.
Crestview is looking for a principal, so we will be placing that person. Another one, I think we're kind of holding back.
Oh
for a
yeah,
little while.
yeah.
She-
That's what I'm
we'll make some
saying. It hasn't
announcements
even been
later.
announced yet.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want their family going, I heard you're retiring. Yeah, you don't do that. So
Right.
absolutely.
But assistant principals,
Sure,
we've
sure.
had
Okay.
2 or 3 make those announcements
Right.
that they're going to be doing something else next year. And again, we respect those decisions, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
for another position, whether it's for their family. Some are for health. I mean,
Yeah.
just a variety of reasons, and the same thing for teachers. And when they announce and they make those announcements and they make those decisions earlier, the better off we are. We
Mm-hmm.
can actually. I know we spend a lot of time sending folks to recruitment fairs. So we actually go on college campuses and talk to students who are going through the programs, and so we try to. We talk to them about our county. We talk to them about the benefit programs that we have here, and the benefits of teaching, not just the dollar and not just the salary, but the benefits that go along with that. And then, we offer contracts. And so we've actually, done a pretty good job of hiring some folks for next year. Some are still in college, some are still out of state, but, a lot of folks here in Robertson County as well. So, principals make recommendations to our HR department, and then I sign off and approve the recommendations that those principals make. So it's it's a process, and we obviously there are a lot of background checks with people working with children and taking care of children's well-being. So lots of background checks and information checks on who those people are. But our postings are on our website. There's rcstn.net, and up on the corner, the right side of the screen, there's an employment opportunities. And it talks about both certified and classified positions. And so certified are those people that have a teaching degree or teaching license or a bachelor's degree, and they can apply for those. The classified positions are right underneath those. And again, those are usually non-degreed people, but bus drivers, custodial, secretarial, technology, and any of those things like that they can come in and work in a supporting role to the classroom teachers.
Yeah, and all those supporting roles, those folks, I love them so much. The ones that are in our class or in our space that you get to know, you just become a family.
Right.
If you've not been in this environment, you just don't it's. I was talking with Dr. Wilson yesterday, our our theater director, our choir director, about this class of kids that are leaving and how it's going to be so hard because he and I got there about the same time, and we've gotten so close to these kids. He's been in the in the college side too, and so he's had to get used to this. I said, it's going to be hard seeing these kids leave. After especially I've had these for 3 years, and some of the ones I've got that are incoming freshmen right now that I'm getting close to. I'm like, when you graduate, it's going to be awful. I'm already getting close. But it's just you just try to keep those relationships. It's just amazing. If you just don't know what you're missing. The education world is just a beautiful place, and I'm so thankful we found it. It's just a really good fit. And again, guys, I talk a lot about if you're retirement age and you've still got something to give, go be a sub. Maybe you can be a full-time teacher if you've got, and the kids love that I'm older. They love to tease me about Miss Vivio, I think you're the oldest teacher here. I'm like, why maybe, full-time teacher. And I said, and they're intrigued, I think, by the fact that I'm not, oh, I'm so old. I've been blessed. I've had this, I'm living a great life, got a lot more to live. And so I think it's something different than the kids that are, students coming just out of college. They're just,
Right.
if it's something you have in the back of your mind you want to do, talk to them. Look online and see if there's something that you can find, just like you can Mr. V, Christopher Lyons. He went in and he became an English teacher.
And do you know the story on that? I guess we can talk about
Yeah,
it.
go ahead. Go ahead.
My wife and I were actually having dinner over in
Mhm.
Hendersonville after church on a Sunday.
Uh-huh.
And I went to school with Mr. Lyons, actually.
Right.
And so we were standing in the lobby. You know how you wait on your table and things
Uh-huh.
like that. And I asked him what he was doing, and he said, I'm looking for a job. Can you help me find one? And I really just kind
Yeah.
of, didn't think he was serious about that.
Uh-huh.
And when we got seated, we were actually booth to booth, so
Oh,
back to
really?
back, and so they finished their meal right before we finished ours, and he stopped by and he said, "Well, I was serious when I mentioned needing a job or looking for a job." He said, "I think I'm retiring from what he did," and he said, and I said, "Well, what would you like to do?" And he said, "Love to teach English or something like that," and I said, "You're serious?" And he said, "Yes." And so I said, "Well, let's talk on Monday." So
Uh-huh.
he came in the office and we talked, and we had 2 or 3 positions open, and principals interviewed him, and I think Dr. Osborne
Yeah.
was the first one to talk to him about what she had open, and he said that he'd like to accept that position there at Greenbrier High.
And we're just thrilled. I was so thrilled. And I was just like, what? Because we had just done some stuff with staypositive.news
Mm-hmm.
because he is one of the writers. And so that's where we had, began our association. So I was super excited. But I've had several people call me and they're like, what are you doing and how did you get there?
Mm-hmm.
And I would walk them through the process. And I even told them, about my original intent because of the work I have done with newcomers to the country, in the Egyptian community and the Latino community. And I love working with English learners and I just love it. And I'm in Mexico all the time. And so my intent was to go back to school myself and be an English language learner teacher and work with the newcomer kids. And quickly found out I didn't have to go back and do all that school because I had something else I could offer. Dr. Osborne said they're wanting to build this audio video program, but I still, that passion that I have for those, I'm around those kids and I can help in that capacity still too, because that's a part of every classroom. And so I had planned on going back to school, and and I was looking into plans I could do through Austin P, and a lot of it was online and different pathways to do that.
Right.
There's a little piece of me that would love to be a history teacher, and I'd even thought about that. But you can do that, especially if you've already got a degree.
If you have
you've
a
got
bachelor's
yeah,
degree,
if you've got a
that-
bachelor's
that's
degree.
the easiest thing to do. But again, that shouldn't be a deterrent to somebody
Right.
who's close or has a lot of
Right.
college hours. But again, the closer you are to wanting to teach what your background is, the easier it becomes.
Yes, yes.
But if it's not impossible at all.
Right.
And there are programs. Maybe it's just taking a simple test to to test your skills, and then go back and pick up a few hours in knowing how to deal with people, knowing how to student relations and things like those.
How to write curriculum, how to just
Exactly.
deal with kiddos nowadays because it's different.
It is.
You
and,
know.
and so those positions are out there, and I would say too, we were talking last night about coaches, and somebody, I know we're looking for several coaches throughout the county in different
right.
sports, and so maybe somebody doesn't want to teach all the time, but maybe they have an ability to coach a sport or something. So again, we would encourage those folks to go talk to their principal of the school that they're interested in. Check those out on our website, because I think a lot of those are starting to be posted. And so, again, maybe you can't drive a bus all day, but maybe you could drive a morning route or an afternoon route or something like that. Maybe you could drive just field trips. And so, we have a position for just about everybody. It's when we mention school, we think of sitting in that classroom before a teacher, but schools are a business, and so there are lots of positions that are required to keep that business running. Everything from custodial staff, cafeteria staff, just coaches, teachers, teacher assistants, administration, you name it, we can find something for people to do.
You mentioned coaches, and I think people don't realize that they think, okay, well, what teacher is going to be a coach? You can be the coach and that be your position and that's your staff position. And it's a part-time position, but you can just be hired on as a coach and not be a teacher in the school. And I think that's what I think they kind of lean to that. They want that to have that relationship with the kids, but that's not necessarily a requirement.
I think most principals would say they prefer that, because again, you're there,
you got
and
the
you're on staff,
relationships,
and you know what the school rules are, how to do that and manage that. But it could be particularly at our middle schools. It's hard to find teachers. They're very busy. A lot of them will teach different subjects, but certainly they if someone has a skill and an ability and they want to make those applications and talk to those principals, a principal would rather have someone who's maybe not working directly on their staff than not have a sport and not give those students those opportunities for that.
Right. And that's a struggle. I mean, I'm an assistant track coach right now, and trust me, they were desperate. because I don't know anything. I'm there to be the female person in case they need, and that kind of thing. And so I've ran my whole life, but I've never done field and track events, and I'm learning about it, and it's fascinating. There's something for everybody, and you learn about it. But what I'm saying is, we need coaches. I mean, that's a dilemma for us is finding coaches to do these different things. And as as I'm talking, to them about being an assistant coach right now, I know I can't do it next year because it's been a time constraint. It's been it's not worked well into my schedule. And so I said, I don't want to just be like, oh, see you kids later. Who can I find that can do this for these sweet kids, because they need this position. And so I've been talking to other teachers. I'm like, hey, I've done this year. There's great kids, and can you do this? And it's a hard commitment to make.
It is,
because it's a lot of time and things like that. So there's so much need, and these are great kids. Oh, they're so wonderful, and I just love them. So you meet knuckleheads, but I haven't met a bad kid. I haven't met a bad kid.
Right.
I've had some challenges, but I know that my kids were challenges to teachers at times, and they're great. They're awesome. But anyway, anything else that we're missing? We've still got some time here, but those were my main questions. Where are we on staffing?
Well,
And
I think you mentioned several of these things. I wrote down proms, graduations,
Oh,
banquets, and
yes.
things like that. So I know
we've had our prom.
you had your prom. It was on the stormy night.
It was on that night, and
Exactly.
Dr. Osborne and I both were sitting there, and we were looking at the building we were in, and we're like, Lord, keep it away from here, because but I mean, we were very nervous.
Beautiful venue and everything.
I
but
mean, we were just praying all over the place for that, and the kids got there safe. They got home safe, because it was just one of those very precarious nights. And it was. I said the kids will never forget it.
Right.
They'll never forget their prom.
And
But,
in an event like that, that also brings me back to days or inclement weather. And,
Right, when we've had to
we've
have the days off. Yeah.
And so as we miss some of those days, and then we call off some sporting events and things like that. But that was a tough call that day on
Because it
prom.
was iffy. I mean, it
It's
was
very
like,
iffy.
yeah.
And then kids have spent money on hair,
Yes,
and nails,
and
and
their
dresses, and tuxes, and rentals, and all those kind of things. And
Yep.
so
Very difficult call, because a lot of
difficult
money
calls.
in that, and it turned out
Yeah.
beautiful.
So,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of those things going on. Graduations are
Yeah.
have been scheduled, and again, when we talk about calendaring and our community being involved, just a reminder, we approve our calendars 2 years in advance.
Mm-hmm.
So someone that says, well, I scheduled my vacation on the wrong week. I mean, 2 years in advance is when
Got
we
plenty of
put our
time to
calendars out
look.
there. So
Yeah.
to do that, but for graduation, we know when graduations are.
Uh-huh.
I think we approved graduations for the year 2027
Oh, how fun.
already. So I mean, we know
Yeah.
right now.
You know when
what
your graduation date
graduations
is.
are going to be.
Well, it's like I'm submitting some stuff to Dr. Osborne for fall for the audio video program that I'm wanting to do. I talked to her a little bit about that, because you've got to get on these calendars early if you want to do something. And that's nothing like what you're talking about. But even for me, things I'm wanting to do next year, I'm trying to get them on the calendar now,
Right.
because I know it'll start filling up.
Right.
But
I also wrote down scholarships.
Oh, yeah.
I serve on several scholarship boards, and it always amazes me how few students actually will complete a scholarship application.
Mm-hmm.
And there are thousands of dollars out there. And, I know maybe, students maybe don't understand where their parents are in terms of funding college, or what monies might be available and things like that. But, every $500 that you pick up, it's going to pay for some books. It's going to pay for some tuition. It's going to pay for
room and
part of your
board,
dorm
or-
and
yeah.
part of things like that. So, there are a lot of scholarships. And again, I we talked about counselors earlier. And so counselors usually are the ones in the school that keep that list of scholarships. But there are also those people that you can go to, and, most every scholarship requires a transcript. So you're going to have to get that. And then, maybe they need some help in writing a letter. A lot of scholarships will ask, why do you need this scholarship, or why do you want this scholarship? So counselors can help with that. And again, that's such a big part of that.
And teachers have to write a lot of letters
Teachers
for
write a
those.
lot of
I've
those
written a
letters
lot
of
of
reference,
letters
yeah.
for kiddos, and for those scholarships and things.
And we talked about the community. I had I'm not going to disclose their name yet, because we're just about through with that. But this person called me to their office probably 6 months ago and just said, I want to honor a teacher that made a difference in my life. And this
Oh,
teacher did such a good job with me. And he said, I wasn't one to go to college and didn't want to go to college, but he said, he still believed in me and encouraged me to do the work that I'm doing today. And he said, I want to honor him somehow. And he said, could I give a scholarship to somebody who's going into this field
how
of film?
cool. Yeah,
And so we've worked with them over the last 4 to 6 months, and we have our scholarship application ready, and so we're going to reveal that pretty soon.
that's cool.
And so again, these students that you know, what an opportunity for the community, a community member to honor a former teacher. But
Mm-hmm.
then that's paying it forward because now a
Mm-hmm.
student's going to be able to take that scholarship and carry it into the program of study that they want to recognize and go on with that. So
That's
we're
really cool.
excited about that. I'm really excited to be able to announce that before long. So we'll do that.
Is the teacher still living?
They are not.
Is there, well, their family, does his family know they're about to be honored?
I
I
don't
wonder.
think so. They do.
That'll
I
be
don't think so.
that'll be cool. That'll be a cool surprise.
It was
Yeah.
it was an excellent teacher. I had that
Okay.
person as well. So
Okay,
it's a
that's
great
cool.
opportunity.
So that'll be a fun surprise for the family
Yeah.
then.
But all
Yeah.
those kind of
That's
end
cool.
of the year things, the proms, graduations, baccalaureates, all those.
Yeah.
Uh, Middle schools are having their sports tournaments right now. Softball,
Mm-hmm.
baseball, and soccer wrapping up for our middle schools, and it won't be long before those same sports. Plus, you mentioned tracks, the tennis, the things that are going on, and so those will carry on right up until the end of school. But I guess I would end with we started that conversation when I came in. TCAP week.
Oh yeah.
So TCAP, the Tennessee Comprehensive Assessment Program, or TCAPs as we know those, um, are starting today actually.
Mm-hmm.
And so in most of our high schools and elementary and middle schools, your students will start taking those tests today.
Mm-hmm.
I think our main focus in elementary programs is English language arts this week, and then I think they'll go into the math, science, and social studies next week.
Yeah.
But that test is broken out over few days, and rather than taking, I don't know how many hours the entire test takes, but probably a couple hours each day for the next week or so, and it's really that culmination of what have I learned this year, and how can I demonstrate that? How can I show that on this test? And so,
Mm-hmm.
some people. I know there's some stress involved in there, and I do understand that because we do want our students to do well. Families want their kids to do well. We want all of our students to do well, but it's that time of year, and so those tests will be graded, and then we'll get those tests back. Um, but I also want to remind families we do place a lot of emphasis on there. We sent a phone call home. I think it was maybe Sunday afternoon that
Yeah. I
please
got
be
the phone
prepared.
call
And
just to remind everybody.
just you talked about attendance.
Mm-hmm.
This is the
Yeah.
week where to make up a TCAP test is really difficult to do.
Yeah.
So making sure we're there, making sure that we have good healthy breakfast, get plenty of rest this week. This is the week that you don't need to be staying up late watching those
Mm-hmm.
shows or talking on the phone or whatever we do, texting and things like that. But let's get plenty of sleep, and then trying to remove that stress from students, where they're coming in and they're relaxed. And, I think there's that ideal performance time that, when they can, do their very best. But, if there's something going on at home, we want to try to take that out of that
Mm-hmm.
student's environment, this week. If there's something that we really need to talk about, and so, let's put that off until next week. Let's get them in school and let's have them do that. But, at the same time, it's, I know the state and I know the schools, all put a lot of emphasis on there, but this is one test, 1 week,
Mm-hmm.
and you and I have spent the last hour talking about great things that kids are doing, great
Yeah.
things that are going on in schools, and everybody we know is not an excellent test taker, and I was. We as superintendents, we didn't see this year's test, but a lot of times they'll show us a test from previous years, and I'm a math person, so I didn't want to look at the math test, but I took a look at I think it was the eighth, it's either seventh or eighth grade language arts test, and it was read about 3 pages about this, then read about another 3 pages over here, and there was a lot of compare and contrast between those two documents, and you know, again, being a math person, sometimes I'm not the fastest reader.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, by the time I read through these 3 pages over here and then had to read this other three, you know, it was difficult to go back and forth and to read between one page and
Wow.
another and to remember,
Yeah.
you know, the details of
Yeah.
this paragraph and find something in this sentence over here that goes.
Oh,
along
wow.
with it. And so, you know,
Wow. Yeah.
I think when some people maybe get on television and say our kids can't read, it's not that they can't read,
Mm.
you know, but that's a deep skill
You better believe it.
for 7th or 8th graders. And
Yeah.
so,
I didn't
you know,
realize they had something like that on there.
you
That's
know,
amazing. Yeah.
it is. And so when we talk about tests and test scores, you know, sure, we want our students to do well. When we take a test, you know, and we talked about athletics. Athletics is a test. You know, how well have I learned and practiced to hit a ball? How well have I learned and practiced to throw a ball, catch a ball? Whatever it happens to be, those are all tests, and we go through those and we emphasize those. But you know that doesn't make that student's you know, it's not going to make or break their future.
Amen.
Whether
Yeah.
they, you know, what score they get this week.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we don't want them to take it seriously.
Right.
You know, I've talked to some parents that are just, you know, I'm so afraid they're not going to do this or that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had somebody come in the other day and said, you know, they took their first ACT test they'd ever taken and scored a 34 on it. I mean, you know, almost topped out. So,
Wow.
you see both balances.
That's
there.
impressive.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
you know, of being worried about, you know,
Yeah.
where we go with that and what classes will we be placed in based on that score.
Yeah.
And the other side of that is, you know, just doing wonderfully on something. So
Mm-hmm.
it
You
is
might
a time.
surprise yourself, in other words.
And so we are
Mhm.
going to have you know, if students are coming to school, you know, if a parent comes to school and says I need to pick up my child, you know, we're going to ask them to delay that an hour or so until we
Mhm.
finish TCAP testing, and so we're going to really minimize interruptions this week and things
Right.
like that. So, you know, but again, I can't stress you know, being at school and taking care of those things. You know, if parents are upset about something or arguing about something, let's keep that away from kids this week.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, probably
Yes.
keep it away
I
from
think that's a
kids all the
great
time,
message
but
to end
just,
on
you know,
here. Yeah,
removing
for
that
sure.
stress. But
Yeah.
you know, we're excited about that, and so it is.
Very
It's
good.
testing time.
And we're going to do great. And on the other side of testing, man, summer's almost here, y'all. So get ready for it. It's going to be graduation season. I mean, as you come back in here in May, it'll be like you got this one, this one, this one, this one. This. You'll have a full week of
You're right.
graduations. And we're out of time. I know my boss is going to be like, LaVern, I've got other programs. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Weeks, for being here. Thank you guys so much. We'll be checking in with Ryan Martin from the city tomorrow. So we'll have a city manager on from the mayor and alderman meeting. So that'll be great. I hope you'll be able to join us here on 1100 WSGI. God bless. Have a great day.
I need a cool drink of water from the